brought, for sure. So Ben's going to have to be imaginative with his decks. And Ben holds down a full-time job. So he doesn't always have the time necessarily to be incredibly imaginative.
And that's one of the big talking points here at the Premiership is, you know, half of these players are like full-time job alongside of Hearthstone.
Right.
And some of them have kind of got themselves in a position where they can dedicate much more time. And some people are like, if you're a student in first year of university, for example, you still have a lot of time available to play Hearthstone. Obviously, that becomes less and less with each year of university. But I know I didn't really do any work in first year of university.
I did so much Hearthstone in the first year of university, or whatever the equivalent was in 1830, that I didn't get to the second year.
I was the same, except with League of Legends. And luckily, I managed to get a job talking about video games, so it worked out.
So it worked out okay. You were studying the right thing all along.
Would not recommend not working at uni.
Don't bother, it's not worth it, kids.
Anyway, let's get into this game. So the mulligans have happened. It's going to be Ben on the bottom, Boar on the top. Speaking of the top, Tunnel Trog as the first draw is going to be a very nice situation for Boar.
Yeah, queuing that Shaman in to obviously the Reno, and it's very difficult when your opponent goes turn 1 Tunnel Trog because you have no idea what they're playing. There's just no read at all you can make from turn 1 Tunnel Trog because everybody plays Tunnel Trog in Shaman.
Yeah, and very typically BoarControl here, we see this Shaman not a super aggressive deck. It's very much going to be looking for those Jade Golems and pushing further on into the game. Definitely mid-range is BoarControl's kind of area of expertise. That's the kind of decks we always know him for. Think of like the Tempo Warrior that he was the one that kind of first created, and then it became solidly the meta deck for quite some time. And you expect these mid-range decks out of BoarControl.
Yeah, and it's going to be a tough night for Boar as well. Not being selected for that team was a surprise. There's been a lot of surprises. He's not the only one. And he is literally, I mean, that came out about 3 hours before he was due to play this tonight. He would have already prepared his decks, his lineups. He will know how they work. But mentally, when you get that sort of kick, sometimes you just need to take a few hours away from everything. And he can't. He's got to get on with it and beat this guy now.
Yeah, and it can certainly knock you off kilter a little bit there. Doomsayer, a nice start here. Mountain Giant off the top. Obviously can't play that this turn, but I think you're quite happy to just drop an in Gang Boss anyway. That 3 mana minion is just so difficult to deal with and such a great presence to have on the board. Both Chieftains have been drawn for BoarControl, but actually right now his hand is looking very awkward over the next couple of turns.
It certainly is. Ben's decision here, and he's hovered over it there, is the Mountain Giant. If you start playing your Imp Gang Boss, if you start messing around, the Imp Gang Boss deals really well with totems, it deals really well with spirits. But if you start emptying your hand out, that Mountain Giant just never gets played. So Ben going with the whole, I'm going to pass up on this Imp Gang Boss now so that I can play an 8/8 next turn and see if you can deal with that.
Yeah, and I think an astute decision there. No Hex in the hand of BoarControl just yet. We may see that come in the next couple of turns, though. BoarControl will certainly be hoping so when he sees that Mountain Giant slam onto the board. But as we said before, that Flametongue Totem is not going to make the hand situation for BoarControl any nicer now. I wouldn't be surprised to see him just dropping totems every single turn so that when his thing from below start to surface, he will be able to just drop them basically for free.
Yeah, but you don't want to play your Flame Tongue if you can help it without it actually buffing something the turn you play it. It's like a charge minion.
Yeah, exactly.
It gives +4/+0 and wins you the game. So Boar's just going to waste, inverted commas, this portal just to get something on the board.
This is like when you're playing Miracle Rogue against a Freeze Mage. You know that Fan of Knives isn't needed against a Freeze Mage. You don't need that board clear. It's the same against a Reno Lock. He doesn't need that, and so he drops it just to get that 1 mana minion on the board, just to get some semblance of board presence. But that 8/8 Mountain Giant is going to be a terrifying thing to stare down for BoarControl at this point.
It is, but it's not actually going to do much against a 0/2, unless he's scared that Ben's going to clear a big board with it, or unless he's scared that Ben's actually going to use removal on a 0/2 totem. You don't mind going a little bit low. You don't mind taking 1 hit from it. So Boar's decision here is, how long do I want this to be around? Obviously the answer's not very. We're just talking scale.
As low amount of time as is possible. But he does have the Jade Lightning in hand. He has a Flametongue Totem, which is essentially 4 damage when you've got minions on the board.
Yeah.
And is going to drop both Flametongue Totems to immediately deal with this. I like this decision. Unfortunately, doesn't get maximum efficiency out of the heal. But that's really not the end of the world when you've just cleared an 8/8.
Yeah, that was his choice. His other option was to maybe just drop the Mana Tide Totem, press the hero power button again, probably eat 8. There'd be a way of getting rid of some totems.
Yep. Demon Wrath was in hand.
And then next turn you get to use your Jade Lightning much more efficiently. You get to keep your totems back a little bit. But he decided, actually, I'm just not going to mess with this 8/8. Who knows what's coming next?
And I think part of the reasoning there as well is with these Flame Tongue totems, unless your hand has things like Jade Spirits in it and such like in the early game, you're actually going to really struggle to find a good use for them later on in the game. Once the minions start to get really beefy, while they are good, they don't make that much of a difference. Massive Twilight Drake being dropped just here, which is going to be a real pain to deal with. Once again, we see no Hex available for BoarControl, so yet another just big, beefy minion that he has to find a way to deal with.
Yeah, and he just was not impressed at all about that. Obviously, whenever you play against Reno, the times they don't have it are 0. They've always got it. And the one thing you don't want them to do when you're playing the Shaman deck is go 4-drop into 4-drop, because they're the two massive threats that are hard to deal with. And having spent up so much resources dealing with the first one, Boar's going to have to find a way to creatively ignore this.
He does have, or did have, the ability to clear it that turn. He could have gone with the Jade Lightning, with the Maelstrom Portal, and then the 8 damage. Or actually, no, you only get 2 damage from the Flame Tongues.
Yeah.
Turns out I'm a bit of an idiot. It's going to use the. It's going to use the Jade Lightning.
Still yourself high, man.
But certainly a fun situation for Ben when some removal is used on one of your minions, but it's not enough to finish it off. It's always I find quite a satisfying moment when you know that they couldn't actually actively deal with your threats.
Yeah, and Ben made a decision on turn 3 not to play this Imp Gang boss. And this Twilight Drake wouldn't have been in his hand because of the extra taps. The Giant wouldn't have been played. The Twilight Drake wouldn't have been as big even if he did get to it. And Ben, this isn't just luck. This is Ben has made a decision that has led to this board state, and it was a decision that has worked out well for him.
Yeah, it certainly has. And now with the Gang Boss down on the board, he used that Demon Wrath to fully clear everything away. Only the totem remaining, but as you rightly said earlier on, it's only really effective on the turn it's played. That's when it has the biggest impact, and you get that bonus for damage. Now, Jade Chieftains are in hand for BoarControl. So over the next couple of turns, if he so wishes, he can start to build up his Jades and also deny a bit of pressure from these two minions. But the Jades are still feeling very weak at this early stage.
Yeah, and this Mana Tide Totem, he'll be desperate to get more than one card from it as well, but he needs more options pretty much immediately. I think the pained look on his face is that he would so love just to roll one time the Wrath of Air Totem, because if he did, he just got a nice clear kill with a Lightning Bolt, with a Maelstrom Portal, off you go. But if you roll something else and it comes up a bunch of garbage, you've just ruined your turn.
And like 99% of the time, you're fine with the Lightning Bolt into Maelstrom Pistol, leave up a 1-1. However, he's got a 0-1 health totem on the board, so the second that 1-1 is left available from the Gang Boss, you lose your totem immediately. Has to go for the Jade Chieftain. Now, usually, this is an incredibly high-value card. When you get the taunted Jade Golem later on in the game, it's terrifying. But it feels so awkward to play that 7-mana card and only get a 2/2 Golem.
Yeah, this is... When I first looked at Jade Chieftain, I was thinking it was rubbish. I was wrong, because I thought this would happen a lot more often than it does. This is actually incredibly unfortunate for it to get to this stage and only be 2/2. And in this instance, it is kind of rubbish.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's just rare.
I mean, realistically, there are a lot of ways in the hand of Ben to deal with this, on top of the fact that he's got a Gang Boss that I wouldn't be surprised if he's just happy to trade that through anyway. Obviously, Maelstrom Portal is an immediate answer if he does go for that trade. But there are other options in his hand as well. Kazakus has now been found. Now, there's kind of some room for debate on whether you just drop this the second you find it, or whether you wait until you get Bran as well, or wait for the opportunity where you know what spells are actually needed out of the potion. Looks like he's going to go for a Shadow Bolt.
Yeah, I feel that he'll keep the Kazakus for a while. That was also an option, by the way. He could have just bumped into the 5/5 there, as this is not long for this world as a minion. And I think the Shaman should not be underestimated in its ability to come back here. So keeping Kazakus back and being a little bit greedy in case you draw Bran soon. But if you don't, then you've got to switcheroo and and just play it.
And you know that if there are Jade Chieftains in a Shaman deck, you know it is a late game focused Jade deck. It's not one of these kind of mid-range Jades where you're kind of going to run out of Jade minions at about 6/6. This is going to be one of these decks that has a lot of Jade available to it and will continue to ramp up. One of the things that Reno Lock really struggles with is late game threats. When there are too many of them, there is only so much removal available for Reno.
Yeah, and this double Mana Tide Totem isn't always the way forward either, so Boar's just busy telling the computer screen exactly what he thinks of it. As is Boar's way, and I think we'll see him here drop one of these Mana Tides and try and draw into some stuff.
The Flame Imp off the Maelstrom is a pretty nice roll as well. Gets that 3-2 on the board, drops one Mana Tide just to start to refresh his hand. Jade Claws coming through. As BoarControl looks up to the ceiling in horror. But we'll see. I mean, one of the beautiful things about having an early game that's really not going well, such as this turn demonstrates, is at least you've got the good cards still in your deck, right, guys? Is that how it works?
Are you going to be the one to break the news to him, or am I? Because I think I'll let him.
Yeah. Well, I'll have that conversation with him later, though. It's like, don't worry, mate. The cards are still in your deck.
Don't worry, you'll be fine. This is a decent pickup, though. This is going to allow him to populate the board and clear up. And Ben, though, still has so many answers in his hand. He's got both the spot removals and the Twisting Nether. And the minions he's got are pretty decent as well. Plus, he's got the ongoing hero power that he's going to get plenty of time to press because there's just no pressure coming in from Boar.
And if we were in a situation where Ben's 6/6 doesn't get cleared this turn, he could even do things like drop the Refreshment Vendor and the Sunfury Protector, and suddenly that board looks terrifying. Like, so awkward to deal with as a Shaman when you've got your best clear. Realistically, it's going to be Lightning Storm. Maybe there's an Elemental Destruction, but it seems pretty unlikely for BoarControl. So then you've got to rely on having so much spell power to be able to get rid of a board that size. And all you can really do at that stage is just hope that you get enough Jade Golems out to contest them.
Okay, so he decides not to remove the 6/6. He's going to use his minions to do the damage with and develop a bigger board, which makes sense to me. The other option also was pretty good because you get to see your card from your Azure Drake and see where you're at. But he's going to do that all next turn. And now
Emperor.
Ben's going to have to start to make use of this hand that he's accumulated in the early game.
Yeah, Emperor is nice, but it's not a very proactive play. He's going to drop Kazakus. Finally decides that it is time. Going for a 10 mana spell as well. We'll be able to use this next turn. None of these particularly useful as the first option, though.
Yeah, the thing with the demons is it sometimes helps you get maybe another Drax. He doesn't need cards right now. That's the thing that's not going to happen. The sheep is probably good. I'm going to guess he went with freeze for the first option.
I would think so.
This is why
the
he's
other two just burn
ages.
cards from your deck at this point. And then you've got DLA, Transform, or 10 armor. All are pretty good in this matchup. The armor feels too passive, really. I'd say the Polymorph is probably the best option.
It is normally, and I think he would have probably gone with that, but because he's probably taken freeze, excuse all the probablys there, then he may feel that freeze... Oh, there we go. Yeah, he gained the armor. He feels that freeze plus Polymorph is a little bit of the same thing.
Yeah. That's totally understandable.
And so he's decided to go for the armor, rightly or wrongly. Let's see how that works out for him as this goes on.
I think with the Twisting Nether in your hand as well, you already have that kind of get-out-of-jail-free guy to just destroy everything. So wanting a bit of variance in what cards he gets, and also just the fact that he hasn't found Reno yet, that 10 armor could be absolutely crucial in this series.
Yeah, he's going to have to... I mean, he's going to be able to Twisting Nether, like you say. He's going to be able to then freeze the board, gain some armor, and then he's going to be able to spot remove, or probably the other way around, exactly how I just worded that. And he's going to have to do it fairly soon, because Boar is now in a situation where... The trouble is you can't go for it, right? Your opponent has very few cards left in their deck. They probably have Reno in their hand. But Boar is in a situation where he is starting to get a bit of this board, and he is starting to draw some cards, and the Jades are starting to get big. So Ben has to make a use of this early advantage, otherwise things could still go wrong for him here.
And speaking of big Jades, you've got Aya in hand for BoarControl now as well. He's already on, what was it, 4-4-5-5, so that will ramp that up by 2 as well. Still another Jade Claws in the deck. However, Dirty Rat has just been found, and that is the kind of card that can really ruin someone's day.
It can ruin Ben's day if he tries to Dirty Rat, which would make a lot of sense with Twisting Nether, and pulls out Aya. He could end up having a right mess on his hands, because Aya would be producing something like a 5/5 when she dies on an empty board.
And just entirely ruins the Twisting Nether, which we saw is kind of the only get-out-of-jail-free card. The Kazakus Potion, as you're going to see now, just going to be used to freeze.
Right, and this is clever from Ben, I think.
Look at Boar's face. He's just boggled. He's like, what was that? Armor and a freeze? Like,
what was that potion? But what is happening now is that this is going to tempt Boar to put more stuff on the board, and that Twisting Nether is going to be even more disgusting. So I think he has to play Aya here. That way he gets some defense from the Twisting Nether.
Try and force at least multiple removals.
He's trying not to laugh at that potion, because you couldn't pick a better potion for your opponent. We saw how it happened.
Yeah.
But Boar's sitting there going, what?
In the
Why is my opponent doing this?
In the scenario, it made some sense. I would maybe argue that instead of going for the armor, you could have gone for like 8 damage or something maybe. But it's going to drop Aya in the end. We know Twisting Nether is available, but it doesn't fully answer the book.
It really does not. And okay, so here we go.
That sucks for BoarControl. It had to be that one, didn't it? Couldn't be the Trog. It's still going to be a Jade Golem on the board at the end of this turn, though, at least. So is not going to be too bad for him. Still has that 6/6. Still can push pressure through. And importantly, Ben still hasn't found his Reno Jackson. That is going to be crucial in this series.
Ben did famously put 2 of the same card in one of his Reno decks in the past. Maybe this time he's countered that by forgetting the Reno entirely.
I've got to be honest. If there's one thing that you can do wrong in making a Reno deck, it's not including Reno. That is the number one.
I can't remember what the card was off the top of my head, but he put 2 of them in, and he then lost the tournament because of it. This was like a preliminary qualifier. It wasn't just something like, it was actually past the Tavern Hero stage, which he won, and into the actual HCT preliminaries, and he went there with a Reno deck with a 2 of a kind in it. So
yeah.
Yeah, we're saying he's an unknown, but he has been around sort of the lower levels of the big stuff.
I remember when I was playing Reno Mage one time, I ended up with 2 Roaring Torches in my deck. One from the Forgotten Torch I had, and one was a Forgotten Torch from like a Babbling Book or something. And I was like, why won't my Reno work? And then it suddenly dawned on me. It's the worst feeling you can really get, but
halfway through flaming customer support and you realise what you did wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Mind Control Tech available here. Wouldn't be the worst board in the world to use it on, but also you have a couple of pretty terrible options from that one. So I think, especially against a Jade deck, you maybe want to wait a few more turns, wait until there's like a 7/7, 8/8, and 9/9 on the board, and then get guaranteed for at least a decent result.
The trouble is he's facing down lethal.
Yes.
So he can't mess around for too long here. Now he's going to have to start possibly, he's considering breaking up the combo. He needs to play something, I think, that he can Shadow Flame and then just hope that Boar's hand is full of removal, like direct damage. And that's what he's going to do. And he's decided to do it. I think maybe the MC Tech would have been a better option there, but there were 1 or 2 things that could go wrong.
Yeah, if you do the MC Tech and you get the 1/1, for example, suddenly your entire turn has just fallen apart, and that's just not a fun situation to try and entertain. You would have had the Siphon Soul as like a backup plan, but even then, definitely not a fun one. Now the Jade Lightning. This is exactly what we're talking about. When you start to get the ramp with these Jades, when they start to get big, it becomes a very uncomfortable situation for the Reno lock, and especially when you can't find Reno.
Yeah, and I mean, Reno's not even going to cut it anymore, so Ben has to deal probably with 2 of these minions and just do nothing. So he's going to think about maybe Siphon Souling the 7/7 and just playing a minion, but that's also garbage. Maybe he plays the Emperor and Blast Crystals the 7/7 and takes a chance, and then heals with Jiraxis if things go wrong. That's also awkward. None of these options are fun.
Yeah. This is the problem. None of these options are actually good. It's just the lesser of the evils at this stage. And the problem with the Jiraxis plan as well is, what happens if you... you need the Reno. You need that 30 HP because Jiraxis, it's great. He's powerful, but 15 HP might not cut it.
So I think he's aware of that, but this is going to make Jiraxus cost 8, which means he can roll a elemental the turn he comes into play.
Yep.
It also means that he can 6/6, whatever they're called. I don't know what things are called. I'm old.
The
Infernal, elemental. I've just got elementals on my brain because of
Inferno. That one.
That was very good. Are you the official?
I am Jiraxus. I'm not actually.
So what it means he can do here is he can use the Emperor to trade. He can gain health with the Jiraxus, and he can make a 6/6. He's got taunts and health gain in his hand. So next turn, for instance, he could Jiraxus, make a 6/6, and taunt it up. If there's a next turn, which there should be.
Depressingly for BoarControl, he's 1 damage away from lethal.
Yeah,
Had
he
that
was
been
rolling
Wrath of
for
Air,
lethal there. While we were talking about voice acting, we could have missed lethal.
Oh, the Reno has finally been found, and the Emperor actually survives another turn, which could be pretty crucial.
But it's such a good turn for Jiraxus, I think, as well. This is why Ben's going to take his time. I think you're right. I think we'll see the Reno, and then Ben effectively mess around for a turn or two to get into a better position when he plays the Jiraxus. But he's definitely got to pay attention to this, because he would have spent the whole of Boar's last turn planning this Jiraxus turn. And Boar knows what happens. Everybody knows what happens when you're in this spot and they just tap. You know you're facing this Reno Jackson.
You know Reno's going to come down eventually. And actually, with a Reno, as well as the Emperor on board, Sun Fury Protector in hand, this again starts to look like a very obnoxious board for BoarControl to deal with. 30 HP still on the Warlock, as well as Ragnaros in the hand. Ben's actually sitting pretty right now.
Yeah, the Ragnaros was massive because it just gives him that option. I wonder if Ben's thinking of not attacking here.
I wouldn't be too surprised just to get the extra tick of Emperor if you turn it into a taunt.
But I think that's what the delay is. I think he's considering just, you know what, I'm just going to taunt up here and get another cut. I think he's in such a good spot. Why take 13? He's not going to take 13 because he believes that Boar's going to have to roll. But I feel that there was an option there just to tidy up and not worry about the reduced costs. But hey, this makes a lot of sense also.
I would have liked to see the taunt go down anyway, but I suppose he's of the mindset that xl3en essentially has a global taunt anyway, and Reno is going to be obnoxious on board regardless of whether it's a taunt. So,
and a bit of experience there from Ben as well, in fairness. He didn't rope panic.
Yeah.
Like, he could have just gone, I'm going to taunt and heal and play some cards, and suddenly you've made a real mess. Instead, he just went with the play he had in his head. And, well, he's going to suffer the consequence of that extra 5. He's going to have to get some good use out of these reduced costs to cover the play he just made. Let's see if he can make that work.
Yeah, he's definitely got his work cut out now, because as we've been mentioning throughout this game, these Jades are not going to get any smaller. Now on 8/8, Siphon Soul is going to be used here, but Twisting Nether and Blast Crystal Potion are both already gone. That is his final spot removal now, aside from, well, I can't even think of anything else he can use other than Power Word, Power Overwhelming on a minion, but even then it's not fun, unless he's maybe running Sylvanas, but even then.
Time is running out for BoarControl, though. He's going to need to pick something up this next turn, otherwise he is just facing effectively lethal, especially when you factor in Ragnaros either killing a minion or your face each turn. Let's see if Boar can find an answer right away, otherwise it's pretty much game to Ben.
Jade Claws, not ideal really. He could have done with something more proactive. It is going to spawn a Jade Golem though, so again, continuing that. But importantly, it's now 9/9, so Ragnaros alone will not deal with that Golem.
And Ben will have, if he wants it, so this is where you start mathsing how you feel about your situation. It's where it becomes important to assess things. Next turn, Ben can go face for 9, play Ragnaros, and every single chance then from there on is if Ragnaros hits face, I win.
Yeah.
And he's got to weigh that against playing more traditionally, drawing more cards, which there aren't many left.
Yeah. Both of these players starting to get low on cards, and this is one of the awkward situations when you're playing Shaman rather than Druid as a Jade deck, is when you're Druid, getting towards the end of your deck is often actually a blessing, because you just have infinite Jade Idols. You're guaranteed a Jade Golem every single turn. Not the case with Shaman. You do run out, and then you just start to fatigue like any other normal class.
This is a little bit different to the last series, Munch. We're still in game 1.
Yeah, this is. I think this game is just about as long as the entire series.
And a victory dance by now last time. Okay, so Ben in such a great spot. Now, is there either lethal here? One off lethal, I think? With Jiraxis and Power Overwhelming.
It's just going to tap. Well, the
lethal.
Leroy is certainly going to help with that one. 10 damage straight from hand without even having to look at Jiraxis. That is going to be this first game over. And, you know, he used part of that combo early on in the series, but it's not going to bite him in the bottom this time, and still had options available. So Ben with a very confident first game in this series.
Yes, and go back to that turn 3 just one more time. We were both thinking, well, you just play the Imp Gang boss, it's natural, it defends against totems on an empty board.
Plays on curve.
He just took his time, he thought about that heavily, and then he showed us what he was thinking. He highlighted the Mountain Giant, hit tap. That meant that he could play Mountain Giant into Twilight Drake, which he wouldn't have had because the tap had drawn in that one card deeper. And the Imp Gang boss just kind of messed around later in the game, and it didn't matter.
But the key thing is that he forced so much removal out of BoarControl. BoarControl had to play on the defensive. He couldn't just proactively keep building up his board. He had to deal with the threats that the Reno Lock was bringing, and that is the best situation you can be in as a Reno Lock, is if you're the one on the front foot dealing out those threats and dealing the pressure out, suddenly it becomes a very awkward and uncomfortable game for your opponent because they know that you still have all of your defensive options available for later.
And on the other side of that, Boar had a pretty awful hand, and in the middle of that game, just for a moment, it looked like he could turn it around.
Yeah.
Just for a couple of turns, it's like, oh, Ben really needs to actually not have the worst spell ever now. Oh, there it is, there's the worst spell ever, and so on. Just for a moment.
Actually, I think one of the really important turns was just when Dirty Rat got the Jade Spirit out of BoarControl's hand. Just having that one extra Jade on the board could have been huge for him. It obviously was the Twisting Nether turn as well, so just entirely removed all of that from existence. Here we go. Dragon Priest now for BoarControl. That's going to be Shaman for Ben.
So, just laughing to myself here like I do. You do that as you age, won't you? You start laughing.
Mate, I already do that. Never mind aging.
But comparing the two characters we had on the game previously, which was Pieman, very excitable, and Jumbre, just no care in the world. These two have found the middle ground of that. They're both very intense characters looking at them.
Yeah, I mean, BoarControl, especially playing, is a very emotional character.
Yes.
Definitely is 100% involved in the game. If you go on the ESL UK Flickr and just have a look through the pictures of BoarControl at finals, it is an absolute roller coaster of emotion.
Yeah, I mean, and to meet him, if you ever met BoarControl when he didn't have a Hearthstone app open in front of him, you would think he was the nicest, most calm, friendly, lovely guy you could ever meet. His parents probably love him.
I would hope so. That most parents love their children.
Until they played him at Hearthstone.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe, to be fair.
Then they probably disown him. So he gets really angry and really, really competitive, and that's good to see. That's the thing. He's not a bad sport. He'll go and shake your hand and say, well played after. But
generally speaking, it's not that he's angry at his opponent.
No, he's
angry at the game.
The game. He's just angry at himself and his game, and he's a very, very sporting character. He's just so intense, and that's a good thing. That is why he is probably the best player in the country.
This is a very common thing among esports players in general, just being incredibly passionate about the game and just desperately wanting every single win. Now, this is an interesting selection of hero powers here. Life Tap, Steady Shot, and Fire Blast. Arguably the best 3 hero powers back when we were playing like Dragon Hunter every game and all that kind of thing. Not necessarily as good here, but the Life Tap definitely, if this is a more aggressive version of Shaman, these are kind of all cards that you can see in a lot of versions.
Right.
With the Finley, I would assume it's going to be aggro though, and Life Tap definitely good for refilling that hand and keeping the pressure up.
Yeah, almost certainly aggro. A lot of the players don't even play Finley in aggro, although since the Spirit Claws got nerfed, they kind of ran out of 1-drop, so it's snuck its way back in because your hero power is so powerful as Shaman. But he has decided to play it because you can see now he's going to just be able to refill this hand after unloading on the Priest.
Now, BoarControl's turn, and for the second time today, we're going to see the downfall of the Dragon deck where, yes, you've got 2 Wormrest agents in hand, and that's great stuff. You've even got your turn 5 Corruptor, but unfortunately, you don't have any dragons in your hand to activate them, so they just become low value and just generally poor cards.
Yeah, this is how Dragon Priest used to be all the time until Blizzard decided it wasn't working and printed a load of dragons.
And those dragons may be leaving again soon.
And this is how Dragon Priest of the future looks, kids.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Dragonless Priest.
And that, I mean, that's not a priest turn that we're unused to seeing. Just turn 2, heal face, and just move
and
on.
sigh while you're at it.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a nightmare. This isn't a turn 3 shaman turn we're not used to seeing either. It's just, here's my things, here they are, they're in your face.
Here is a boatload of damage on turn 3 and a terrifying board to boot. Now, he's got the Talon Priest. It's a great drop on turn 3, but usually you want to have a minion to play it with.
Yeah, and just sometimes everything you do doesn't work out. Last turn, BoarControl had the serious option of playing a bad Wormrest Agent and shielding it just to draw a card and try and find himself some dragon synergy of some sort. But instead he didn't do that, which made a lot of sense because it just would be an awful board state. But that would be now actually useful with the Dragon Priest, which he's having to play anyway. A 110 or whatever it would have been isn't fantastic, but it's better than nothing.
Now, finally, Ben having to make some decisions in terms of what do I trade here? How do I go about making this turn happen? Not too difficult decisions.
No, I was just thinking, which face do I hit?
Yeah, exactly. How do I go about killing... Or do I even go about killing this time?
But you're right, he's got to manage his overload here. Every card in his hand has overload apart from the 2 he can't play. And the 2 he can't play, if he's overloaded, he can't play again.
Looks like he is going to trade in Sir Finley himself, along with those Jade Claws. Keeps himself in control of the board.
Maximising the value you get from that Flame Tongue Totem, knowing that Boar can't cope with it. And
still no dragons. I mean,
he's gone through the pain barrier. This is what it goes through. After you go through acceptance and anger and all the other things, this is the end effect.
He's into laughter and whatever. I don't even know what the steps are, but
this is like the 100th stage of grieving, where you just go, you know what? I hate everything so much. I'm going to laugh.
It's called give up. It's called give up. Do you, in any universe, consider just coining out a Corruptor here purely to have something on the board? You're already at 17 HP.
I think, personally, I prefer just playing the Power Word Shield on something. Just to try and draw a card that does something.
Looks like he is going to go with Wormrest Agent.
I mean, this is horrible as well, but...
He finally found a dragon, though.
Yeah, I could pretty tell it was a dragon from the body language of flapping his arms, resembling a dragon. I think that's what he was trying to do.
Yeah, he was doing his dragon impression, but I fear it is too little, too late, as the lightning bolt and the lava burst on top of the damage coming out from that Flame Tongue Totem is going to be a very quick second game. And BoarControl, his face says it all right there. Not finding a dragon until, what, his 10th card or something. Very unfortunate set of events for him. But a very fortunate game for Ben, just rolling that one over and taking a second one in the series. Now 2-0 up and 1 away from a clean sweep against BoarControl.
Yeah, this has been a pretty exciting first couple of matches. Whoever it was that invited these 4 back is probably fearing for his job right now.
I've got to say...
Was it you?
I'm not in charge of invites. Don't put that on me.
Production have politely told me that was not a required statement.
Do not quote me on any of this. No. If you are any of the other players here tonight in the Premiership, Ting Ting, Hello Leroy, Osher, Cypher, and you've got a Dragon Priest, I would be a little bit nervous right now because Dragon Priest hasn't been doing so hot tonight.
I mean, Leroy's loving it, right? He's hoping the 3 people who he can't beat will get beat.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he just wants... basically, Leroy is... His situation right now in this tournament is that everyone who's done well in the Premiership in the past just does really badly during the group stages. And then he's going to be able to just kind of run away with it.
Don't want to lower Ben's achievement here. We see a zoo from BoarControl and a bit of a interesting look. A look that says, hey guys, yeah, I brought a zoo. Don't tell anyone.
Now, Zoo's been seen a reasonable amount on ladder as of late.
Right.
Not necessarily in tournaments, and it's not necessarily been doing exceptionally. However, it can have some okay matchups.
Okay, so like I said earlier, BoarControl and Ben have played before, and they know enough about each other to know there'll be some metagaming going on. This looks to me like Boar just guessed wrongly that Ben would bring Druid. That's my first instinct, is that Ben's going to put me on mid-range to control decks because I play a lot of mid-range. He's going to bring Druid to take those decks down, and I'm going to do his Druid over with this. Not necessarily all that, because it's not last hero standing. He must have had other things he feels he can beat with this. But I think a large part of it is that... And this build with Crystal Weavers is actually a very, very strong deck. It just happens to not beat Pirates. Actually, it beats Pirates. It just happens to not beat... Brain, please don't do this right now. Anyway, there's things it doesn't beat.
I think maybe the goal of bringing the Zoolock here could have been to go against Reno Lock. Obviously, Demon Wrath kind of becomes very ineffective when you're going against a board of demons, and obviously this is the kind of Zoolock that has some demons in it, since he's got the Crystal Weaver in there to buff up other demons. While it's not the greatest matchup ever, I wouldn't necessarily say it's that favoured.
Conventional Wisdom is the opposite to what you said there, but I do agree this Crystal Weaver build is actually okay against Reno Lock. Surprisingly so. There'll be people in chat now saying Sapcasters, blah, blah, blah. This deck is actually okay against Reno Lock. Trust me, I played a lot of it. But this is really bad against Priest, this particular deck. You make some sacrifices to get those Crystal Weavers in your deck. But the upside is you do get those taunts that are pretty handy. And yeah, pretty good. But I feel like this was to beat Druid. And I feel like Boar's laughing because there's just no Druid here.
Yeah, and that's it's never a fun situation if you bring a deck and don't even on it. I don't know from the series you're watching, but definitely looking forward to seeing Hello Leroy play later. We know that he is a guy that loves to bring counters to things. He loves to scout his opponent and figure out what they're going to bring. And will he scout correctly later? We'll have to find out. Definitely a lot of counter decks will be seen in that matchup. I wouldn't be surprised to see. Councilman comes down on 3. Very unsurprising. If you've ever played Zoo before, since Whispers of the Old Gods, you know that Councilman is arguably the most powerful card in the deck, certainly on turn 3, and one of your major threats. But a prep sap with a questing adventurer down is certainly going to ruin that curve for BoarControl. That goes back to his hand, and now he's in a very tricky situation.
Yes, Soulfire. Oh, now does favour.
Is the dream alive?
Favor. If he can discard the silverware going, he's in a great spot. I mentioned the taunts. The reason I say that is that you can build this zoo with 4 4-drops now, with double Crystal Weaver, and he rolls one.
Fortune favours the brave, ladies and gentlemen.
Fortune favours the lucky munch.
Hey man, you don't get an opportunity if you don't push for it.
But yeah, you can play this with 4 4-drops, and it's by no means certain that he's doing that. A lot of people don't play that many 4-drops because Zoo does become a bit slow at that point. And Ben not getting what he wants from this Barnes. And one reason this deck isn't that popular with the Barnes is the variance involved is pretty huge.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of minions available for it to get, and some of them not quite as good as others.
Yeah, they're all okay. Well, pretty much all okay, but they have to come at the right time. So you want a different one each time you play the Barnes. So sometimes you want an Auctioneer, sometimes you want the Questing Adventurer because it's turn 10, and so on and so on. But BoarControl here, he's going to have to get this win at some point, but he's going to have to beat this Miracle Rogue 3 times with Zoo, Shaman, and Priest. It's going to take some doing.
And I like this little play here with the Voidwalker into Crystal Weaver, just because that 4 HP makes the Voidwalker so much more awkward to deal with. There are a lot of cards in this game that deals precisely 3 damage.
Yeah.
Very few that deal 4, and especially up against that Rogue. Obviously, Eviscerate would be a good answer, but you don't really want to use an Eviscerate onto just a Voidwalker.
Yeah, he's... Yeah, I was going to say, he's going to have to win. He is. He's playing Crystal Weaver and Defender of Argus. I'm so pleased that, chat, you're wrong. So pleased that 4 4-drops probably being played here, because this build of Zoo is very, very different to your common or garden Zoo. It's much slower build on turn 1.
Unsurprisingly, we're seeing a mid-range version of it out of BoarControl.
Well,
who would have thought BoarControl would play mid-range? It's not quite mid-range. I don't want to push that
in terms
too
of
far.
how Zoo is, we'll push that a little tiny bit. That's fine. And just starting to have a chance for game 1 of the 3 he needs for his comeback.
However, Siphon Soul in the hand here of the Miracle Rogue, that is certainly a miracle to be working with. Could deal with the 6-3 instantly. No Doom Guards in hand just yet. But the sap is going to be the port of call for now, along with an SI7 agent, just to get some semblance of control.
Yeah, just to get something, as you say, on the board here. The downside is going to be when he walks into this Imp Gang Boss. Crystal Weaver with Imp Gang Boss. Like, you play the Imp Gang Boss now with the other 2 minions. You keep the Crystal Weaver back. Then the turn after, you get loads of 2/2 imps. I want to see Boar's face when this Siphon Soul gets cast. Even if he's winning the game, I get the impression it's going to be a roll eyes.
Yeah, we've seen that eye roll many, many times from BoarControl, and it looks like he's going to opt to go for the Councilman along with Imp Gang Boss Malkazar's Imp, And now he's looking to be in a situation where if he can find Doomguard with Malkazar's Imp down, suddenly that's where this kind of Zoolock really starts to run away with things and starts to become a little bit unstoppable. Now, Questing Adventurer has been found for Ben, but doesn't really have that great of a combo to work with right now. You've got, obviously, Gadget-san into Conceal if you really want to go for that, but there's a lot of damage now on the board for BoarControl. Yeah,
and the downside, well, the dilemma for Ben is he really wants to siphon this 3/5. That's the obvious target, but he knows that the Crystal Weaver's in hand. He sapped it. He put it there. And so he knows that this Imp Gang Boss is going to get all sorts of value next turn with the Crystal Weaver, and so there just weren't enough targets for this Siphon Soul. There were too many targets for Siphon Soul, and BoarControl is going to get into a fantastic position after this turn.
I actually like the decision there from Ben. He could have gone for the value trade on Argus or on Malkazar's Imp. Obviously, on paper, you go for the 2/3 over the 1/3, right? However, with the threat of Doomguard in deck, with the double draw available if a Doomguard does come off of the life tap, suddenly you get in a very awkward situation. So I like that he gets rid of the Malkazar's Imp. Unfortunately, no Doomguard seen anyway, so it doesn't really make a big difference in terms of the matchup, but the right thought process was there.
Yeah, I agree, and this is it now. We've got the coin into Conceal, and that's
Auctioneer
going to be
into coin into Pray for something
5, 7,
good.
9, 10, 11, 14. So BoarControl is 50-50 lethal as it stands next turn with the juggle. Now it's not, but obviously Ben isn't developing, the board isn't developing that questing, so Boar probably has 2 turns to win this game. Let's see what he can draw.
However, with the Azure Drake and Fan of Knives in hand, suddenly Ben does have some way of dealing with this board, of like cutting down the amount of minions here. The Direwolf will come down. The Darkshire Librarian available as well.
Yeah, he'll definitely put that down because obviously it's the best time to play it. You discard nothing, you draw a card after next turn. Ben will clear up so much of this next turn. I think Boar is going to need to pick up something good. Maybe he's thinking of tapping into Doomguard.
Perhaps.
If he plays the Dark Librarian, then taps and then picks up the Doomguard, even though you can spam tap last all you like, that would be so much better for him if he gets to play it.
At the same time, though, if you play the Librarian, tap into Doomguard, you still have Doomguard for next turn, and you won't actually lose anything. Malkazar's Imp comes up there. Doesn't want to play that just now by the looks of things. It's just going to swing on in for damage and hope for something next turn. Maybe even keep the Librarian, so if he does get Doomguard next turn, he'll get more draws and search for things like Soulfire, things like Power Overwhelming.
I think the reason you play the Librarian, and that's what he's going with, is so that if you do get cleared with Azure Drake Fan, and he'll know that's about the only way he can get cleared here, we will see that eye roll, at least you draw a card. So you can start off with that card in your hand and make your decisions from there on.
Oh, Backstab as well is going to be a very nice find here. Just to make this board clear a little bit juicier. You could go for the Gang Boss there just to deny the Imp coming out. Or you could...
Can't backstab it.
Oh, of course you can't, yeah.
It's hurt.
So you go for the Argus or the Malkazar's Imp. Either one a decent target.
Yep, very much so.
Arguably Argus, just so you can then trade with the Auctioneer into Malkazar's.
I can buy that one, especially as you're so low on health, every single point matters. And these are the moments where you sit there, back of your mind, thinking, does the Imp appear? Does the Knife Juggler shoot if I do it this way round? Should I kill the Juggler first? How do the mechanics work? I knew all this 5 minutes ago. There you go.
Like
it's fine.
He's done it correctly on this one.
He has, but that'll be part of his thought process there. We're just double-checking all that, and Ben is getting stuff going here.
He's going to go very aggressive. Actually, just go straight for a cold blood on this one. He's actually found a Conceal as well. He's going to go for the trade. I wasn't sure if he was just going to go face there and say, do you have 2 damage? Obviously, we can see there was 2 damage.
Going the face may have actually been the correct play there. Here's the Doomguard. BoarControl can breathe out. Yep. He's got the first one of the 3 required to get this back for the reverse sweep. He's got to find a way to get a win with the Priest. I'm assuming that at least at some point in the tiebreaker process that goal difference counts. So I think we'll see him queue up the other deck first because Priest is such a bad matchup there.
Yeah, I don't think goal difference
there isn't actually a
matters because
tiebreaker
we're in
at all.
Swiss
It'll just
now.
be seeding,
No,
so it won't matter much.
Obviously, in round robin, that is a factor. We're no longer in round robin, so we get rid of the awkward things like that. And now in Swiss, it's all about the actual wins that you get. So it's about taking entire series straight on into the next one. BoarControl going to be looking to try and tie things up with his Dragon Priest once more, hoping that this time he'll actually see one of his scaly friends. And we're going to see the same rogue deck out of Ben once more.
He's hoping, but he's not seeing one as we can see it at the moment. But his hand is significantly better. It's not significantly better, but it's as better as you can be without actually having a dragon. And the question is, how many things... I think he'll probably be doing some quick maths here. He would love to keep quite a few things in this hand. But he cannot keep them all because he needs to get a dragon. He can also minimise the impact of not getting a dragon by just chucking away anything that relies on a dragon.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I think in BoarControl's position right now, you keep the Wormrest Agent and just throw everything else away in hopes that you find the dragon. I can understand keeping the Talon Priest. It's one of the few cards in this deck that even if you don't have... even if you don't get full value, it's still a good card to drop. Once again, no dragons here. Can he find one on the draw? The answer is yes. So
if only that card was good.
A sigh of relief.
Like a 5-mana, 5/6, draw a card that's
Discover
good, discover it from your opponent's deck. If only they'd made
Also
it a dragon as well.
deck.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, just in case it's not busted. It's even doing things on turn 1.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice card, Dracnoid Operative. But not deciding to coin out one of his 2 drops there. Obviously, there's the option to go for that and either search for the dragon or drop the Wormrest Agent, but deciding he wants to keep that coin for later. And with Dracnoid Operative in hand, if you can play that on turn 4, that is a phenomenal situation.
Yeah, and he's in just a great spot here. He can buff things up, and he has all the right buff minions, again, with the Blackwing, with the Talon Priest. He's going to have actual options, which is something that this deck suffers from. If you're one of the best players, you don't want to play Priest if you can help it. A lot of the time, there are very few decisions to make that really impact the game, other than make stuff, kill stuff.
Yeah, definitely the Dragon Priest, similarly to the Jade decks often, is a matter of being able to curve out well. Obviously, there are decisions in like how you play your cards best to curve correctly, but generally speaking, a lot of this kind of matchup is about just kind of finding
Right,
cards.
and so the better players don't want to play this, but they're in a position where they feel they should. That's not a bad pickup from the Barnes there. That coin going to be able to fuel enough stuff down the road. Questing Adventure, obviously Auctioneer if it comes along, obviously Edwin if it comes along, and Boar just making the Secret Agent. How many Secret Agents do you know that announce they're coming through?
I think that's the joke, Lorinda. That may well be the joke.
That's a joke, is it?
Yeah.
I don't like jokes.
If you look at the flavor text behind it, I think it's I can't remember word for word, but it says something along the lines of he's a secret agent that is like spying on the Cabal and the. Oh, I think he is the Cabal, right, as priest, but he's spying on the other 2 factions of Gadget-san.
Right.
But it makes it awfully difficult because he has a giant dragon head. So I think the whole. The kind of the humor behind the card is like
it's lost on old people, obviously. It's just lost. Sorry.
Well, I have an add-on that tells me flavor text of cards.
Next
Tells
time
me
I want
the
a joke
backstory.
explaining, I'll come back. I'm so sorry. Okay, so Boar doing the thing that this deck does, tidying up, making sure if you ever get behind on board, you just don't come back. You're holding over, it kills their things, they make more things, you lose. So he has to put as much stuff on this board as possible. And if he can hold on here, and he's making a good fist of it so far, he's going to be in a 2-2 situation, and Ben's going to have a lot of pressure on him.
Absolutely. I don't want to call it too early, obviously. Ben still has things in his arsenal, but that 2/6 taunt is going to be a real pain to deal with because, you know, one of the biggest gambits of this entire deck is the fact that you can build up this massive minion, hide it, and then hit them in the face the next turn. If there's taunts available, suddenly that becomes a much more difficult plan to execute.
And now Boar has so many decisions. He can just play the operative again, get more stuff. But this play of just playing as many things as possible on the board, just going to keep so much pressure on. And even this is difficult. Do you want to play double shield or do you want to play a 3-5? I think I'll play the 3-5, but it's not clear cut at all. With your minions both on 4 health, you may want to stop that from being a thing.
Yeah, I think one of the key points of the decision, I'd probably drop the 3-5 purely because sap is a card that exists. And when you get caught by the sap after using 2 power word shields, feels pretty awful. You could obviously spread those out across minions, but I suppose actually there is an argument to be made that you use that power word shield, force the sap from your opponent, and then suddenly you have your operative back in hand. Get the second proc on the battle
having
cry.
said there's no decision to make here, that was actually a remarkably awkward turn. And Boar basically splitting the difference, putting the attack on the board, getting some damage into the face, and keeping Ben off the board. That is what this deck does. Ben doesn't have a conceal. This is very, very different to the last game where he had some... Oh, okay.
There you go.
It's the same as the last game.
He did have that prep as well, so could have gone for the prep fan of knives to keep on searching, but he's going to be able to get that conceal off easily and hold that for the next turn. But now is an opportunity for BoarControl to just start to slam things into face.
Yeah, 11 points of face slamming is an option already.
But Ben's not actually ending his turn just yet. There's still ways that he can continue playing this turn.
He needs to decide now, though. I make this point a lot about Miracle Rogue. I know it's the difficult. He wants to preparation fan, or he wants to backstab first and see if he can get a better preparation. But he needs to do something now because he's going to have to decide on the slow animations what he wants to do.
Yeah. Or maybe this could be a situation where Ben is just well aware that
the point?
He's going to have to do a lot of things next turn. So think about your potential combos now. Get as much thought time in as you can, because the odds are BoarControl's not going to need that much time to think about his turn.
Yeah, and Ben delaying doing things. This means that next turn he can start off the turn with a questing adventurer, for instance. Then he can do a whole load of stuff and then conceal again. Obviously, the whole load of stuff is going to include killing BoarControl's board.
It needs to, if he wants to stay in this game. There's going to be that power word shield coming down, and now with 2 secret agents here, this board doesn't look to be going anywhere. The Eviscerate is a very nice find. It's going to be preparation to start things off, just to try and find more answers as the Azure Drake goes down as well.
Azure Drake seems extravagant here. It's not a mistake, but it's a lot of your mana. If you're going to go through a whole lot of your deck in one turn, and he decided it through Boar's turn. It was an instant play that basically he just double-checked because there was more on the board than he anticipated. And it is paying dividends killing these things, but he had to invest 5 of his 7 mana, well 9 if you count preparation on this.
And this was the thing, he was searching for his second preparation. He had to try and find that so that he could go with the preparation into Fan of Knives, and suddenly with the spell power on the board, you have a much more convincing clear. You can finish off the 2-3 with your face, and then trade your Auctioneer into the remaining Dracnoid Operative. Fortunately, not the way that this one went down. It means that these trades are just a little bit more awkward.
And actually, I was saying that Priest was probably the hardest matchup. I've not been really paying attention to board lineup. His next deck is Druid, which is kind of terrible against Rogue. And interesting.
Yeah, that one certainly will be an interesting one. Obviously, we could see Lethal was available from hand for BoarControl. He had those Corruptors. And along with the Twilight Whelp, actually having dragons in his hand for once, he's going to be able to finish that game off. 2-2 is now the scoreline. Everything is up in the air. Things were looking great at the start of this series for Ben. He went 2-0 up very quickly. But now things have been flipped on. I say very quickly, actually. The first game was very, very long.
It was longer than the whole first series, but yeah, it was still...
The second game made up for that one, though.
It really did, and BoarControl are winning those 2 back in a row.
Yep.
Going to have to win with Druid against Rogue, and there's a thing in Hearthstone casting where you say, oh, it's favoured, therefore it's over. No, it's favoured, therefore there's more chance of it happening. There are still a lot of things the players do, oddly enough, that's why we play the game, to influence the outcome. Just whether you're favoured or not is not enough. And it's not Druid. Why have I got Druid written down? Why didn't you save me? It's Shaman. which is fine.
I also have Druid written down. So I don't have an answer for you, friend. I don't have Shaman in the lineup that I was.
But we've seen him play Shaman, so we cannot excuse ourselves. But head will roll. Probably mine.
Intriguing.
Okay, so everything I just said.
Forget it. Yeah,
Shaman.
and actually, when you consider, again, it's that same old talking point that I've mentioned a few times when you're looking at Van Cleef, Questing Adventurers, Leroy, they are all snuffed by taunts.
Sorry. I just going to look at the screen while I work out what's happening. Yes, they are. And these Shamans, the Jade Chieftains, are in hand again, and obviously totems. And Rogue just doesn't like being beaten down, and Tunnel Troll on turn 1, why not? Boar's had some pretty awful draws this tournament so far, but
this one's going to make up for it, I think.
When your mid-range Shaman gets the aggro Shaman draw, you are in such a great spot. You've given up the early aggro for not many cards. When you draw them, it's the same as if you're playing the aggro deck, with bonus longevity.
Now, there is a very nice turn available for Ben. You go for the coin, you prep, you eviscerate the 3/4, and you just drop an 8/8 Edwin and say, look, if you don't have Hex, you lose the game.
It's such a brave play.
It is brave is the word, because the second Hex comes out, that is your entire hand gone. That is basically all of your options gone. And with Questing Adventurer, for next turn, you could set up a much safer play with Conceal. But it's definitely a play that puts your foot on the accelerator pedal and you say, look, I know that you don't necessarily have that many taunts available. Obviously, Feral Spirits turn 3 would suck, as does the Totem, but I feel like in this matchup, you've got to try and force the issue.
So if you prep a Vis Coin Edwin, that leaves you with precisely Questing Adventurer and Conceal in hand. It's not the worst thing you can do.
He's going to go for it. Even weaved in the backstab for that one, so that he can buff it up to 8, 10, 10. Or in fact, did he play Questing Adventurer?
I don't think so, but it certainly
he
looked
like hovered
that.
over it. I was like, wait a second.
This is, after all, the man who played duplicates in his Reno deck. Yeah, and, well, he may well get away with this.
2 damage to face from BoarControl, but that's not even close to the 10 that's about to come through from the likes of Ben. He even has a Conceal available in his hand, should he want to play that. Questing Adventurer is an available play this turn. He's just going to dagger up, though, and
he's going to Conceal, I think, as well. He's got Sap for the attack. Is he going to bother concealing? No, he knows the Hex wasn't there last time. He's just going to take his chance. That makes a lot of sense.
I agree with that, because then you can conceal your Questing Adventurer next turn as well. Look for more threats, and then when a taunt does come down. Oh wow! Actually trading.
Yeah, he didn't have enough to kill it, so he had to trade to try and find the Hex. He only had 9 damage, with Lightning Bolt being 4, the Portal being 2, the Claws being 2, and the Thingy being 1. Plus, he didn't have 5 mana anyway. So the Thingy being Blood Mage Thalnos in this instance. So he decided to trade to dig for the Hex, because he knows that even if this Edwin only hits once more, he's basically lost, because the Rogue will find sneaky 10 through the course of the game somewhere. Unless he's playing healing, which he may be, but we saw none of it in the first game. With the Water Speaker, of course.
Usually the Wrath of Air is the totem you're searching for, not in this game. BoarControl needed that Stone Claw, and he has not found it. Another 10 damage comes down, along with a Questing Adventurer and a Conceal. Even if the Taunt Totem is dropped, it will not be enough to save BoarControl now. What can he find? Thing from below, certainly nice, but with the Sap in hand.
We can't see any way out of it here. It looks like for the second game in a row, or second match in a row, there's probably going to be a surprise. Is it the Taunt? It is not.
But the thing is, even if it was the Taunt, you trade with Questing and then just hit the face fort 10 once again. We said right at the start of the game, when you get the Van Cleef opportunity like that against a deck that you know is going to drop Taunt after Taunt, you have to just go for it. Pray that the Taunts aren't there to start the game off, and just push on that aggressive. And, well, Ben read that situation perfectly and is able to find the victory.
Well, that's 2 from 2 that we haven't got right. We managed to torpedo an entire team with our caster picks.
That was definitely a game that I'm quite happy to be wrong on that one, just because of how good of a series it was.
It was a great series. Plenty back and forth. Ben didn't have to make that huge Edwin. There's 2 hexes in his opponent's deck. It's a decision you make knowing that if it gets hexed, you've just lost on the spot. You've given up all those resources. And Ben thought, no, this is it. If he hasn't got it, I beat BoarControl. Went for it, got it, and he is 1-0 in this Swiss.
Yeah, and the odds of the hex being there were a lot lower than the odds of it being there. So playing the odds correctly on that one. Now, we're going to be going into a quick break. But in a few minutes' time, we'll be back with Ting Ting up against Hello Leroy, another one of our veterans against one of our freshly qualified contenders. We'll see how that one pans out in a few minutes' time.